bacteria. Maybe it's just for something in technology that is for the end times, like when you're dying, they hit you with adrenaline, anything to wake you up again. It's this particular where I think that there's these designs in biology that are not, meant for a specific thing to spread out everywhere for everyone. Maybe it's in like some really niche component of a person's gene where they would suggest that instead of dying. So if that comes into terms as you buying like things for your body that you're not supposed to have, like Dick Cheney's heart that was made out of a machine and him fueling the war in Iraq for decades. Walking outside with a whole bunch of clothes on, or just some of them, is a way in understanding how warm your body can keep without what you're doing. A similar representation with bacteria can be who washed their hands and who didn't. This is what's necessary in knowing who done it, where something is never finished unless you can have total estimations of everything in between. Having this much power would suggest that you have time to spare with all the time in the world, What this would incorporate is the malpractice of in between having all the time in the world and time to spare. These values are something of what can be seen in computers as... One thing I'm scared of is breaking things that are not mine. When an ownership comes into play and these institutes take over, they feel the ownership of, well, quite frankly, anything in a state of emergence. And how many people are scared are part of that category. And so if you're putting that into perspective of interest, that's a hell of a cash cow. Now this thing, I gotta say, I would be lying to you if I did not jump off this structure. However, I clearly did not do that. But if time is not of the essence in any way, shape, or form, because when an emergency is over versus when it begins, those bottlenecks, who's to say the in-between of the curve is bent or isn't? And speaking on bottlenecks, it's clearly an allegory for the rabbit hole. The rabbit hole came from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. In the Bible, it can be seen in two different captions of these people who are put in a furnace by a king to denounce God, and they said, "No, I will not." So the king says, "Turn up the heat." And these guys in the furnace, they did not burn at all, despite being into the furnace with a whole bunch of heat. Daniel and the lion's den. These lions did not touch Daniel despite him being thrown violently into them. And if you get thrown violently into any cage, the animals are more than likely to come at you. With what I'm doing, there's like more than one way to skin a cat. I want to incorporate all these like fairy tales just because of simplicity, that it's a lot more easier to talk about them and they're more well known than Christianity, even though it should be inferior to Christianity because it leads to these paganism ways of, well, they always have these witches as the enemy, and the enemy is, nothing close to having source of full powers of a witch. Is always just a a-hole behind a screen with a whole bunch of cash. But the simplicity of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears can be looked at as the three little pigs, in their houses. These three variables. I can relate these three things that I just did earlier while having some intense moments with coffee. But before we get to that, it's first important to note the girlfriends that I don't have. Instead of the porridge being too hot, too cold, or just right, having that moment of just right be, which girlfriend would I rather choose? Them being not real, because I've only had one who was in 8th grade and now is married. And stopped talking to me in high school for breaking up with her after holding hands with someone in a movie theater, and the very next day I dumped her because I knew it was a setup, and this is 8th grade drama. The next day she goes to her drama club. Tyler Colvin told me she just broke everything on stage. Oh, I loved her so much. Last girlfriend I had, 8th grade. Give me a moment. The thing other than that is the girlfriends who are not real. So these three, I would imagine myself to have like a girlfriend. There's like 3 archetypes of women. One's like these airheads. I'd like just to attribute them to like these hippie kind of things where it's like, yeah, I understand that, and this is them pushing for mysticism. The whole holistic point of view is like this giant stopgap where doctors succumb to it when there's nothing else because it's better than not, right? So this would be the stance of like these the girlfriends who are like whimsical and would have your back in the most outlandish things. The other being the ones that are more professional and saying that you need to stop doing that and focus on things that really matter by the book. And by the book, that means a PhD. And so the third girlfriend would be one who doesn't want any part in what you're doing. So this might be, for me, the one I relate most to because I don't have either of them. So for me, Goldilocks would be the porridge most fitting, would be the one that wants nothing to do with me. Whether it be the one that was too hot, would be the one that was always too involved in what I'm doing and had my back with zero criticism. And the one too cold being the one who would not want anything I'm saying. Her positive criticism would be, I'm doing it all wrong, and stick to what the PhDs have to offer to show for, which are split when it comes to a double slit experiment, and we'll speak on that in just a moment. But it's important to note that the positive and negative in science, it can be either way. They're just symbols. They could have chose that for anything. In math, it's all these symbols with phi or gamma. These can be any symbol. It's just they chose these Greek letterings because that was the cream of the crop to show for. But these circles, the further we go from there, I don't know if I had it in frame before, you can't see these chips in the paint. And these things are circles and windows. Oddly similar to a magnetosphere and Riemann sums. So magnetospheres are huge. This is where the science community are acclaimed at saying, when we go through doors, we don't diffract, so that we're null and void of the phenomenon that quantum particles embark out as. Mainly electricity doubles with magnetism, making these magnetospheres out everywhere. And so that's what he meant by, in going through a door, it's like a double slit experiment where the particles going through do exhibit these wave-like phenomenons. When they're saying wave-like, it's just as these magnetospheres being chopped and then put, as waves would have it, the curvature is just on different angles. That alone is an entirety of the consensus that we don't diffract when we walk through doors, as the magnetosphere broken up into wave formations. But on a larger scale, if you're looking at the Earth as like a piece of dust to the galaxy, who's to say that the gravity behind such, that's what the second thing they don't have is the quantum gravity analysis of these magnetospheres, which would entail, or dovetailing the difference of the magnetosphere into the wave of its environment, probably through Riemann sums, these stair-step functions. That is a third thing they don't know. So here's 1, 2, and 3. The Riemann sums are these blocks on the base of a graph, and they, when going into infinity, getting infinitely small blocks would deduct what an integral is. Everything under a curve, a tangent. And so it's no wonder those three things are what they're missing. And when you're left at odds in between, things go to waste. Something as cheap as this, you would need either to throw it out or consult a high-end jeweler, or any of them, that would just know how to put something like this. This is essentially just a clothes hanger, but a little more fanciful. Yes. We're all out of the trail break. We don't have anything without eggs. Going from shop to shop to find something with better shots. This is a better shot than the shop that has nothing without eggs in it. That has something without eggs in it. The one thing that is now a nothing was this trail break thing. So kudos to one of these places knowing what they don't have. And then the temperature of things when they go down, if it's meant to be hot, it loses quality. You need to make simplicities out of these anomalies. So the quality of something when it gets colder doesn't mean when you first got it at the best place it's going to be better than the second runner-up. The second runner-up might combat it if it's a thing made to be hot and they are able to get it hot because they're more timely. That in consideration. My scarf is short so it falls off of my neck. My earbuds fall out of my ears so they drag on the ground a lot when I'm running. Those two things are really simplistic point of views that anyone, any age, shape, or form will be able to understand. What lies behind it, I have to stay tuned and find out.